Hey, it's me, Robin. As you could probably tell by the title of this video, I'll be covering the topic of what a furry is. However, before we get into that, I need to briefly talk about where I've been. As some of you know, a few years ago I tried to attempt making a storytime animation channel, though I quickly found out that wasn't for me. So I've been spending all this time improving my art, opening commissions, which by the way are open, so if anyone is interested in commissioning me, I will put the links in the description to my social medias, and if you're interested you can PM me there on my social medias. I also started college again, so my videos won't be uploaded regularly, but I'm going to try my best to upload them as regularly as possible. But onto the video now, I guess. So what is a furry? Well, according to Wikipedia, if you search up the term furry fandom, it will say something along the lines of this. Furry fandom, a subculture interested in anthropomorphic animal characters with human personalities and characteristics. Though Wikipedia isn't wrong about their definition of what the furry fandom and what a furry is, that isn't exactly what a furry is. There is a lot more to it than that. Furries sadly have a bad reputation due to the individuals within the furry fandom, but also due to issues that happened with some conventions which gave people a bad image of furries. So what do people think when they usually hear furries? Well, usually people think either two things when they hear furry or furries. They either think about their cute furry companions, which was something I discovered recently that some people refer to their pets as, or they think about the furry fandom. But if they aren't a furry, they usually don't think about what our definition of a furry is. Instead, they usually think of specific parts of the fandom, these parts of the fandoms usually being fursuiters. From talking to others in my own personal life over the years, I've gotten to know what people think about the furry fandom, but also a lot of other communities and fandoms. Usually when people think of a fandom, they tend to see more of the bad side to the fandom rather than the good in a fandom. So this means when people think of the furry fandom without knowing much about it, they usually don't have a very good opinion of the fandom. I want you to keep in mind when people have bad opinions on things, it is not because they are bad people, but it is because they don't understand those kinds of things. Though there are some people out there who may still not like furries, and that's okay. I feel like people shouldn't be forced into liking something they may find unusual or strange, as long as they don't go out of their way to hate on the fandom in question. So instead of getting angry at those people, instead, respect people's opinions, even if you don't agree with them. If people don't know much about the fandom, then try and teach them about it instead. They'll only teach them if they actually want to know about it, and if they are willing to learn. So into this mess we shall go. When people usually think furries, they mainly think about fursuiters, which is understandable as they are the main face of the furry fandom. Because of them being the main face of the furry fandom, opinions on the fandom may be heavily focused around what some fursuiters may do. So the main opinions people have on the furry fandom is as follows. 1. They don't know what it is. 2. They think it's cute or fun. 3. They think it's weird or unusual. 4. They are people who dress up as animals, so therefore want to be animals. 5. They are creeps in animal costumes. 6. All they want to do is have adult fun time in animal costumes. And 7. They want to diddle animals. So as you can tell, there are a lot of differences in people's opinions on the furry fandom. Why is this? Well, usually it comes to how people came across and learned about the furry fandom. Some people may have learned about the fandom from their friend, who might or might not be a furry. Some may have learned about it from their favorite YouTuber. They could have learned it from the news, or just in everyday life. However, some people receive a good first impression while others receive a bad first impression of the fandom. The first impression will usually affect the person's image on the fandom as a whole. So some of those with a good first impression may have good views on the fandom. They may have even looked into it more. Those with a bad first impressions may have only seen the bad first impression and didn't look into it further than that. This is why first impressions are important. Thankfully, over the more recent years, more furries have been making media and content to help people learn about furries and its fandom. So this way people can have more good first impressions of the fandom, but also to help learn others about what the furry fandom actually is. So I suppose we should get more into those opinions people have on the furry fandom. Well, some of the first ones, they may like the fandom for its fursuits, whether it be because they look cool or because they look cute. There is a variety of various suit types and styles of suits, but not just this, they may also like the more artistic side to the fandom, which is its artists. To some, the fandom is known for being very colourful and welcoming. The characters are seen as very unique for each individual and stand out in each their own way. The colours catch some people's eyes and draw them in, so does the welcoming nature of the fandom. This is why some people have good views of the fandom. Some of them even become part of the fandom for those reasons. While on the other end of the spectrum, some may have been more introduced to the fandom's more adult side, and assumed the rest of the fandom was like that too. Much like every other fandom, the furry fandom also has its adult side, and I am going to be addressing it instead of covering it up. All fandoms have its issues, even the furry fandom. However, that doesn't mean the whole fandom should be based on it as a whole. So why do people think furries want to be animals? Well, people think furries simply want to be animals just because some of the furry fandom dresses up in costumes of anthropomorphic animals. So they believe that when we dress up as these various animals, it is because we wish to be these specific animals. Later on in the video, I will be addressing more on this later, along with a few other things, but I will leave it for when I'm going to be talking about what the furry fandom actually is, so please stay for that. Why do people think that people in fursuits are creeps? Well, this is because sadly in the fandom there has been some creeps that had child victims. I can't say the word because of YouTube, but we all know what I mean. These children fell victims to some people who owned fursuits at some conventions, which gave the furry fandom an even worse name for itself. Nowadays, a lot of furry conventions do not allow anyone in them under the age of 18. This is mainly due to cost. However, in a way also prevents stuff like this from happening again. Of course the people were arrested, I believe, but this is why some people believe all furries who own fursuits are like this. It's honestly really sad to see because a lot of us really aren't. Why do people think furries want to diddle animals? Well, similar to wanting to be animals, they believe because we dress as animals, we want to be animals. However, some also think that because we want to be animals, we also want to diddle animals. Which again isn't true because in the first place we don't actually want to be animals. However, the other reason people may think this is because again, some bad people in the fandom did things to animals no matter if the animal was alive or, well, not living. This is a specific person, however, along with a few others, but you can find videos on YouTube that do talk about this case, and I do recommend watching those as I don't feel comfortable going into detail about the issue. But this has also added to the bad image that people have built up of furries. Why do people think that furries just want to have adult fun time in animal costumes? Well, there is a logical explanation for this opinion. As you have seen, a lot of negative opinions on the fandom tend to extend to the adult side of things. The reason for this is because many believe that furries is a kink thing. Yes, you heard right. People think being a furry is a kink. I can't give away all the reasons as I'll be getting into it soon, but some of the reasons is because a few years ago, some TV shows displayed the furry fandom in such a light. They made it look as though for all furries were adults wanting to have adult fun time in animal costumes. They also made it seem like furries wanted to be actual animals too. The media definitely wasn't kind to the fandom, but in recent years has gotten more kinder. Though some of the furry fandom is to blame for people viewing us this way, however, I accept that there is a more adult side to our fandom, and I personally don't blame them for our fandom having a bad view. However, sadly a lot of the fandom does blame them. Though our fandom may seem friendly and welcoming, like other fandoms, it still has its issues. So what is this more adult side to the fandom? Well, as previously mentioned, like all fandoms, the furry fandom also has its more adult side. People do also have to remember a lot of the furry fandom is adults, so of course you're going to find a lot of adult things in the fandom. This can range from adult jokes that only the furry fandom will get, one of those being knots and lipstick emojis, which I'm not going to explain because if you're a furry you will get it. Comment if you get it because I will be looking at those comments. I want to see. I want to see if anyone gets it. For some of those who may know the website Bad Dragon, you may know these are adult toys that consist of toys that look like specific parts of an animal. You know what I mean. People both in and out of the furry fandom know about this website. Thing is, this website was actually mainly targeted towards the furry fandom, but somehow managed to appeal to those outside of the fandom too. Heck, it's kind of an adult joke at this point. Though these aren't the only things in the adult side of the fandom, there is also the art side of the fandom, so yes, there are artists in the fandom who draw not safe for work art. But again, this is pretty standard to the adult side of the fandom. All fandoms have this side that draws not safe for work art. However, one thing that is unique to the furry fandom and its adult side is, well, mersuiters. What is the difference between a fursuit and a mersuit? Well, as we know, a fursuit is the name of the costume that furries wear. Those who wear fursuits are simply referred to as fursuiters. Though there are different types of fursuits and fursuiters, in another video I may go into more detail about that. But while fursuits are costumes that fursuiters often pay a lot of money for to get made for them by a fursuit maker, so these are very expensive. However, some fursuiters may even make their own suits. Either way, it takes time to make these suits. So then, what is a mersuit? Aren't they the same as a fursuit? Is a mersuit also the same as a fursuiter? Well, yes, but no. A mersuit and a fursuit are different kinds of suits within the furry fandom. A fursuit is a suit often worn by a fursuiter in public spaces, such as conventions or public meetups. These suits are solely only for safe for work purposes. On the other hand, a mersuit is a suit meant for, well, private stuff that stays in the bedroom. These suits have zippers on them and, well, openings for access points, if you get me. These suits are solely for not safe for work purposes. This suit is not for public use. You don't wear them to conventions and you don't wear them to public meetups. A mersuiter can also be a fursuiter. There are fursuiters who own both types of suits, though there are some who own only either a fursuit or a mersuit. By the way, both suits still cost a lot to make. However, mersuiters sometimes give people bad opinions on the fandom and can kind of be a controversial topic, though honestly shouldn't be. Why might people mersuit? Well, simply because why not? It helps people meet others and, well, have adult fun time with giving away their identity. So, in a way, it can be a good thing, especially for those who don't like giving their identities to strangers, or having strangers know exactly what they look like, especially if they are only looking for a one-time thing. People may also not be comfortable with their body, or even confident in their body, which is why they may also mersuit. Before judging and ridiculing people for doing things they enjoy, no matter what it is, I feel like we need to think about why people might actually do it. People have their own reasons for mersuiting, besides some of the ones I listed. It's the same reason as why people might also fursuit too. Everyone has their own reasons for doing things. So what do I believe a furry is? I myself am a furry, so of course I like the fandom enough to actually be in it. Though because I am also in the fandom, and have been for a while, I'm well aware of some of the issues within the fandom, but not just that, I'm also aware of what makes a furry, well, a furry. I believe the wiki isn't wrong. Us furries are people who like and have an interest in amphro animals. Though this isn't just an interest, we adore them. We enjoy drawing amphro animals but also dressing up as amphro animals. It's funny to think, but the majority of the furry fandom actually doesn't have fursuits. You also don't need a fursuit to be a furry. So many people both in and outside of the fandom believe you need a fursuit to be a furry, but you really don't. Furry is something we simply call ourselves in the fandom. You aren't a furry because someone else calls you a furry. You're only a furry if you yourself can determine if you're a furry. The furry fandom is also very welcoming. Those rumors are true. This is because a large percent of the furry fandom is LGBT+. We welcome people of all kinds to the fandom. Though we are still having issues in the fandom, we are largely very welcoming and friendly. Being a furry just isn't an interest in amphro animals though. It is also about the community we have. People can explore their gender identity and many other things through fursuiting or simply drawing amphro animals. So I believe a furry is an identity, a hobby, or even a job. There just isn't one definition of being a furry. In fact, there are so many different definitions of being a furry. It is unique to each individual within the fandom. It means something different for everyone. For me, being a furry is enjoying and expressing what I love, which is amphro animals, but also expressing myself. This fandom is the fandom I've kind of found my home in. It makes me happy. Though I can have some bad experiences, they can't outrule the good experience I have. Though our fandom has a long way to go, we have done so much for ourselves. With that, I guess I'll bring the end to this video. I'm not sure if this video helped explain furries completely, but there really isn't a solid answer to what a furry is. It means something different for everyone, though I hope I did clear up some things about the fandom at least. If you enjoyed the video or even saw some problems with the video, comment your thoughts below. Though before I end this completely, I highly recommend watching Ash Coyote's movie called The Fandom. It is a documentary you can find on their channel on YouTube. It goes over the history of the furry fandom and how it came to be. I'll probably pin it in the iCard, I think it's called that, but if it's not, I'll link it in the description. But for now, I guess this is goodbye. But before that, if you liked the video, you could subscribe, maybe hit the bell, maybe like, please.